Good evening, everyone. Before we begin, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from and what time it is there. Every comment helps these disturbing stories find their way back to you. Now, let's step into the darkness. I've done more than my share of graveyard highway shifts, and I used to think nothing could unsettle me anymore. Not the drunk crashes, not the fatal rollovers, not the long nights where coyotes stare at you from the brush like they're waiting for you to fall asleep, but the night I responded to the abandoned pickup on US 50 changed the way I see silence. I mean, really changed it. Because there's the normal desert silence, the wind, the insects, the occasional car. And then there's the kind of silence that feels like something living is holding its breath, watching you decide your next move. It was the middle of January, 3:12 a.m., the temperature just above freezing. Dispatch reported a white Ford F-150 with hazards on, parked on the shoulder near mile marker 143. That stretch of highway is pure nothingness, just black asphalt cut through miles of dust, sagebrush, and darkness that looks thick enough to swallow a person whole. When my cruiser approached the truck, the hazard lights cast these slow, pulsing orange flashes across the desert, like the world was blinking at me. And the moment I stepped out of my vehicle, something felt wrong. Not weird, not off. Wrong, like I was arriving late to something that had already happened. Both doors of the truck were wide open, driver and passenger, no damage, no signs of a collision. The interior lights were on, illuminating an empty cab that looked almost too clean. No tossed belongings, no backpacks, no fast food bags, no spilled drinks. Nothing lived in, nothing human. Just silence and cold air sliding through the open doors like the truck had been left mid-conversation. I called out into the night, announcing myself, but the sound of my own voice didn't travel right. It felt muffled the second it left my mouth, smothered by the darkness. And then I noticed the ground. There were no footprints. None. Not a single sign anyone stepped out of that truck. The gravel around both doors was smooth, as if no one had ever touched it. Even if someone got out and walked away, they would have left some kind of impression. Boot marks, drag marks, something. But the desert floor was untouched. My stomach tightened as I walked around the truck, shining my flashlight into the cab. A phone sat in the cup holder. The screen was cracked straight down the middle, the kind of break you only see when something heavy drops directly on it. But the phone was warm. Not just recently used. Warm. Warm, like someone had been holding it seconds ago. Then I heard it. A metallic tapping behind the truck. Tap. 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 3 taps. Perfect rhythm. It wasn't random. It wasn't wind. It was deliberate. Like someone flicking their nail on metal, slowly, patiently. I moved my light toward the sound, trying to spot something loose on the bumper or license plate. Right when the flashlight beam touched the back of the truck, the tapping stopped instantly, like someone yanked their hand back. And, in that sudden quiet, the desert felt even more suffocating. The air felt thicker, like the night was pushing in around me. 10 yards behind the truck, the beam hit footprints. 2 sets, barefoot, adult-sized. At first, I thought maybe a couple had been drinking and went off wandering into the desert. But these footprints were wrong. They were in perfect sync, stride for stride, side by side. Same spacing, same depth, same angle of step. Nobody walks that perfectly in the dark. Nobody walks that perfectly at all. The footprints continued straight into the sagebrush. But when I followed them deeper, something even stranger stopped me cold. The footprints ended abruptly, not faded, not lost in the brush. Ended in a precise, perfect line. 1 step, 2 step, stop. Then absolutely nothing ahead of them but untouched desert. No stumbling, no direction change, no signs either person kept walking. It looked like both walkers stepped into the same invisible doorway and never came out. And the dirt ahead was smooth in a way that didn't match the rest of the terrain, like something heavy had flattened the earth in a slow circular motion. Before I could call it in, my radio exploded with a burst of static so violent it felt like someone shouted directly into the speaker. It wasn't regular interference. It had a depth to it, like breath. Long, wet inhalations dragging through the speaker, as if something enormous was leaning close to the microphone. I tried to call dispatch, but the signal kept cutting out, replaced by static that rose and fell like a slow heartbeat. I moved back toward the truck, pulse racing, every instinct screaming at me to get inside the cruiser and leave. But procedure wouldn't let me. I checked the cab again and froze. There was a phone sitting on the driver's seat, not the one from the cup holder. A different one. Same cracked pattern down the screen. Same model. Same case. But this one was glowing. I leaned forward and saw the messaging app open. A new message thread. No contact name, no number. Just a blank profile picture and a message typed in perfect white letters across the cracked glass. Do not turn around. The air behind me felt instantly colder, like something huge had stepped up directly behind my spine. Not touching me, not moving, just waiting. My breath caught. I didn't blink. I didn't move. My own heartbeat became the loudest sound in the world. I've been in danger before. I've been in fights, chases, standoffs. Nothing ever made my body react like that message. Every hair on the back of my neck lifted in the same direction. My fingers went numb. My knees felt like they were turning to stone. Something was behind me. I didn't have to see it. My body already knew. Seconds passed in complete silence, the kind that hurts your ears. Then, in the distance up the highway, I heard something that broke the tension. A second cruiser approaching. Tires on asphalt. A sound I've heard 1,000 times. But even that noise didn't echo right. It sounded like it was being swallowed by something in the desert. The approaching headlights stretched across the road, long and distorted, like they were bending around something invisible. The second the other officer's boots hit the ground, the pressure behind me vanished in a way that made my knees almost buckle. Like someone had stepped out of the space behind me in a single, fluid movement. I spun around with my flashlight raised, adrenaline overwhelming every part of me. Nothing. Just the flat desert, stretching endlessly into the dark. But I knew, absolutely knew, something had stood there a moment ago. My partner jogged up, asking if I was all right, but I couldn't answer. My eyes were locked on the untouched dirt behind me, knowing that whatever had been there left no prints, no trace, no indication it had ever existed. Then the phone on the seat vibrated. Once, hard. My partner leaned in to look, confused. The message on the screen changed right in front of us, as though invisible fingers were typing into the cracked glass one letter at a time. You should have. A chill shot straight through my chest. My partner asked what that meant. I didn't tell him, because I already knew exactly what I was supposed to turn around and see. I barely slept after that night. Even when I finally closed my eyes the next morning, the memory of that pressure behind me, cold, heavy, intelligent, kept replaying over and over again like a looping nightmare. I've been scared on duty before, but this wasn't fear. This was something deeper, something primal, something my brain didn't have the vocabulary to explain. I tried writing the report as cleanly as I could, omitting the part about the message typing itself and the presence behind me, but even the stripped-down version made the sergeant stare at me longer than usual. He told me not to go out alone to that stretch again until further notice. At the time, I thought he was just being cautious. I didn't realize he'd seen something like this before. The missing persons investigation opened immediately. The truck owners, a young couple named Harris and Lena Burton, had left their home in Fallon at 1:40 a.m. They never arrived at their destination in Ellie. No calls, no sightings, nothing. Both of their phones were logged as inactive by their carrier the moment dispatch sent me to the pickup. That didn't make sense. One phone was warm, and two identical cracked phones? That wasn't coincidence. That was wrong in a very specific way. The department sent 3 of us back out the next night, me, Officer Bowen, and Officer Curtis. All 3 of us carried high-powered flashlights and shoulder cams. And yes, I dreaded going back. I told myself whatever happened the night before was some atmospheric fluke, stress, imagination. But a part of me knew the truth. The desert wasn't empty. It was occupied by something that didn't want to be seen, something that moved without prints, breathed without lungs, and could type warnings on a dead phone. When we arrived at mile marker 143, the air felt instantly different, dense, stagnant, almost humid despite the freezing temperature. It reminded me of the moment before a huge power grid kicks back on, like the atmosphere was waiting to surge with something. The 3 of us spread out, scanning the brush and the dirt. My flashlight shook despite my efforts to steady it. We found no footprints where I'd seen them the night before. The ground was smooth, unnaturally smooth, like someone had combed the desert with a giant rake. Curtis wandered ahead, while Bowen checked a dry wash. I stayed near the shoulder, forcing myself to breathe normally. That's when my radio buzzed. Not static, not voice, but a sound exactly like the slow inhale I had heard the night before. A long, vibrating breath that filled my ear like someone had pressed their mouth right against the speaker. I ripped the radio off my shoulder and stared at it. The screen blinked, glitched, then cleared. Bowen called over, asking if I heard something weird. Before I could answer, Curtis shouted, "Hey, someone's out there." He ran toward the sagebrush, beam cutting into the darkness. Bowen and I sprinted after him. Curtis stopped at a patch of dirt where something lay half buried. My stomach dropped as soon as I saw it. A phone. Same model, same case, same crack straight down the screen. "How many phones did they have?" Bowen muttered, kneeling beside it. Curtis reached down to pick it up, but the screen lit up before he touched it. It vibrated violently in the dirt, screen flickering like a heartbeat. A message appeared across the cracked glass, the letters forming slowly one by one. "Get back in the car." Curtis stepped away like the phone had burned him. Bowen swore under his breath. I felt a cold weight settle into my chest. Something wanted us gone, something that wasn't bluffing. The ground trembled, just once. A single jolt, not like a typical desert tremor. This was heavier, deeper, like something massive shifting its weight under the earth. Curtis backed toward the road, suddenly pale. "You guys hear that?" Before anyone could answer, the dark ahead of us changed shape. At first, I thought it was a shadow. Then my eyes adjusted. A silhouette stood between the sagebrush. Tall. Wrong proportions. Too long in the torso. Too still. Like someone stretched a human outline into a shape the body shouldn't make. Bowen's voice cracked. "Sir, tell me that's a person." I couldn't. I absolutely couldn't. The silhouette's edges flickered in our flashlight beams. Not like it was moving, but like light didn't behave correctly near it. Then Curtis whispered, "It's looking at us." But there were no eyes, no face, not even a head shape I could fully comprehend. Yet I felt it looking. Felt it the same way you feel someone, staring at you in a crowd. The radio on my vest crackled again. Slow, deep breathing. And then, "Don't move." Not a threat, not a shout. A calm instruction, but the voice wasn't from dispatch. It wasn't human. Curtis bolted. He turned and sprinted toward the road. The moment he ran, the silhouette vanished. Not stepped away. Vanished like someone cut it out of reality. Bowen grabbed my arm, shouting to run, but I couldn't. Something in the desert shifted again. The dirt in front of us folded downward, like something enormous was pulling itself out of the earth. Then Curtis screamed. We spun toward the road. A second silhouette was standing next to him. Same impossible shape, same wrong proportions. Curtis froze entirely, his feet locked to the ground. Bowen aimed his flashlight, but the beam bent away from the thing like light refused to touch it. And then Curtis's scream cut off like someone flipped a switch. He didn't collapse. He didn't fall. He just stopped screaming and stared forward, eyes wide, body rigid. The radio on my vest crackled again. The same calm voice. "Don't look away." but I did. I couldn't help it. I blinked, and when my eyes opened again, Curtis was gone. No silhouette, no dust disturbed, no tracks, nothing, just empty road. Bowen grabbed my vest, dragging me backward toward the cruiser. Get in the car now. We ran. I didn't dare look behind us, not after what happened to Curtis. The desert air pressed against my back again, heavy, deliberate, aware. The same presence from the night before. My legs burned as we sprinted. Bowen fumbled for the keys. The moment he unlocked the cruiser, I dove in and slammed the door. He threw himself behind the wheel. Before he could start the engine, both our radios activated simultaneously. No static this time. Just one message, spoken in that same calm, patient voice. You shouldn't have come back. The engine roared as Bowen floored it. Gravel sprayed like gunfire behind us. My heart slammed against my ribs. I stared straight ahead, refusing to look in the mirrors, refusing to risk seeing what might be pacing the car in the darkness. 50 yards down the road, the ground jolted again. The cruiser fish-tailed. Bowen regained control, sweat dripping off him. I checked the rear-view mirror anyway. I wish I hadn't. For a split second, just long enough to burn into my mind, I saw a tall, thin silhouette standing in the middle of the road, where Curtis had been moments earlier. Not running, not chasing, just standing, watching. The headlights stretched around it like the light didn't know how to touch it. When I blinked, it was gone. We didn't stop until we reached Fallon. We reported everything except the parts we knew would get us sent to a psych eval. Curtis was officially listed as missing. Bowen transferred 2 months later and refuses to speak to me. As for me, I still patrol that stretch, but I don't stop for abandoned cars anymore. I don't go near open desert at night, and I never ever look behind me when I'm outside my cruiser. Because a few nights ago, while fueling up, I got a text on my phone. Unknown number, no contact photo. It was a single sentence. You should have turned around. And then beneath it, another message typed slowly, like invisible fingers pressing each letter. Next time you will. Most highway patrol officers fear drunks, wrecks, or high-speed pursuits. But the thing that still wakes me up at night, 3 years after it happened, wasn't a chase or a crash. It was a radio call. A simple, routine-sounding dispatch that should have been impossible. A call that came from an officer who didn't exist, using a call sign that wasn't assigned to anyone living. I didn't know that at the time. I just knew the man on the radio sounded calm. Too calm. Like someone trying to imitate what calm should sound like without understanding it. It was 1:58 a.m. on Highway 93, about 40 miles north of Pioche, Nevada. Nothing but desert, cliffs, and long stretches of asphalt that disappear into black nothing. Cold wind was punching through the gaps in my cruiser door, and the sky was so starless it looked painted over. I was halfway through my shift when the radio crackled with a voice I didn't recognize. Unit 7-3 requesting backup, mile marker 209, officer down. My blood ran cold. Officer down is the one phrase that freezes you no matter how long you've worn a badge. I grabbed the radio and responded immediately. Dispatch, confirm Unit 7-3. Repeat, confirm Unit 7-3 call. Dispatch didn't respond, just static. But the voice came again, louder this time, clearer, like the person was standing inside my cruiser, whispering directly into my ear. Need immediate assistance. Officer down, hurry! Something about the voice was wrong, not threatening, just empty. Like the person speaking had learned English from recordings and was imitating tone rather than feeling it. Still, I couldn't ignore the call. I floored the accelerator and headed toward mile marker 209. The cold desert air slamming into the cruiser vents as the road curved through canyons and open flats. But as I drove, my confusion grew. There is no Unit 7-3 in our district. Call signs follow a strict pattern. Everyone knows everyone, and I knew for a fact nobody was assigned that number. Yet the voice had used the exact radio format, tone, and timing of a trained patrol officer. I kept driving anyway. Protocol, instinct, dread all tangled together. The radio crackled again. Hurry. Just that single word. One breath. Too calm, too rehearsed. The desert ahead was pitch black when I neared mile marker 209. My high beams stretched across the asphalt, revealing nothing but empty road. No cruiser, no headlights, no flares, no tire tracks. Then, just as I slowed down, my radio burst alive. "You're close." I slammed the brakes. My heart dropped into my stomach. That's not how officers talk on the radio. That's not how any trained person talks during an emergency. I swept my spotlight across the shoulder on both sides. Nothing. The desert looked untouched. Even the gravel beside the road showed no indentations, no footprints, no tire marks. But as I rolled forward, something appeared in my beams. Something small and reflective. It wasn't a car. It wasn't a person. It was a badge. A Nevada Highway Patrol badge lying in the middle of the asphalt. I stepped out slowly, every instinct in me screaming not to touch it. The badge number read 172. The nameplate beneath it was scraped off like someone had taken a knife to it. The metal felt ice cold even through my gloves. And then something even more unsettling registered in my mind. The badge was the old design, retired design, the type issued 24 years ago. My radio hissed again. "Pick him up." My heart stopped. Not pick it up. Pick him up. I spun around, scanning the desert. At first glance, the shoulder looked empty. But then my flashlight hit something half hidden behind a layer of rocks and brush on the right side of the road. A cruiser. An old one. So old I had only seen them in Academy photos, with the outdated blue stripe and the square light bar. Desert dust coated the windshield like the vehicle had been sitting there for decades. I walked closer, breath fogging in the air. The driver's door was open just a crack. The interior smelled like rust and dry heat, the kind that bakes into fabric over years without sunlight. A hat lay on the passenger seat, a trooper's hat with the same old badge pinned to the front. The badge number was also 1472. My spine tightened. The radio on my shoulder popped loudly, making me jump. "He's waiting for you." The voice sounded closer this time, warmer, but still empty, like something learning emotion by listening to recordings. I pointed my flashlight across the shoulder, expecting God knows what. But nothing moved, nothing breathed, nothing made a sound except the low hum of wind. I ducked slightly to look into the back seat of the old cruiser. That's when my light hit something that made my stomach twist. A body. Or what was left of one. Uniform shredded, skin cracked like sun-dried clay. Eyes open, not white, not decomposed, just wrong, clouded, empty in a way that made my legs weaken. The corpse looked decades old, but the radio clipped to the dead officer's vest, flicked on. Unit 7-3 requesting backup. The exact same voice I'd heard earlier, the same cadence, the same emptiness, except the lips of the corpse didn't move. The body didn't twitch. Nothing changed except the crackle of the radio repeating the call for help. Again, and again, and again. Unit 7-3 requesting backup. Unit 7-3 requesting backup. Unit 7-3 requesting backup. I stumbled back, nearly slipping on the gravel. The night suddenly felt wrong, like the whole desert leaned in closer. My breathing grew shallow, my chest tightened. I turned toward my cruiser, but froze when a shadow moved across the asphalt behind me. Not a human shadow. Something taller, something narrow, something that stretched across the road too slowly, as if its movements didn't belong to a body with bones. The radio hissed once more. "He's looking at you." I spun around, flashlight shaking. No one was there. Nothing was there. Just the dead cruiser, the badge in my shaking hand, and the dark stretch of desert that felt suddenly inhabited by something I couldn't see. I didn't remember running. I didn't remember getting into my cruiser. My next clear memory was slamming the door and peeling off so hard the tires squealed on the asphalt. My radio was still repeating the same message as I sped away. But then, as I crossed mile marker 210, the message changed. Don't leave him alone. A wave of nausea hit me so hard, I nearly pulled over. I forced myself to keep driving. I didn't respond. I didn't breathe. I didn't look in the mirror. 10 seconds later, the radio spoke again, this time in a different tone. A deeper tone, a tone that wasn't imitating calm anymore, a tone that sounded disappointed. You shouldn't have left. The signal died completely after that. When I returned to the station, I reported the call as a false transmission. I didn't mention the badge, or the body, or the shadow on the road. But while I was filling out the paperwork, my supervisor froze when I casually mentioned the number 1472. He told me quietly, without breaking eye contact, that badge number belonged to Trooper Daniel Wyatt, a patrolman who vanished in 1998. His body was never found. His cruiser was never recovered. His last radio transmission was exactly the same words I heard that night. Officer down, Unit 7-3 requesting backup. I didn't sleep for 2 days, but 3 nights later, when I was washing my cruiser before going home, I found something lodged under the passenger side windshield wiper. A badge, old design, cold metal, number 14-72. And when I picked it up, my radio, powered off, whispered a single phrase in a voice that didn't belong to anything alive. You're next. I didn't go back to Highway 93 for 3 weeks. Every time the schedule tried pairing me with that stretch, I swapped shifts, picked up overtime, even volunteered for DUI checkpoints. Anything to avoid mile marker 209. I told myself the badge I found under my wiper was some sick prank. Maybe a retired trooper messing with me, or one of the guys at the station trying to get a laugh. But no one at the station joked about it. Nobody even smiled when they heard the number 1472. They just went quiet in that uncomfortable way that tells you there are stories nobody ever put into official reports. And if they did know something, none of them were stupid enough to say it out loud. Meanwhile, the radio interference kept happening in small, awful ways. The hum would come through at random, like a slow, deep inhale too close to the mic. Sometimes the speaker would click once, like someone tapping metal with their nail, just like the tapping I heard on the road that night. And once, when I hit the power button, the radio didn't turn on. It lit up, all channels, all at once, every frequency, every line, all lighting up in a pattern that couldn't happen. The screen glowed white for 3 seconds, then died again. When I finally got it working, the only thing the display showed was a single word: back. I should have told someone. I should have reported it to radio maintenance. But what would I say? My equipment is haunted. I heard a dead trooper on an encrypted line. Instead, like an idiot, I decided to confront it myself. It was the 3rd week of February, a few hours past midnight, when I couldn't ignore it anymore. I was driving the western end of 93 when the radio came alive, on its own, with the same cold, empty voice. Unit 7-3 requesting backup. My hands froze on the wheel. I didn't push any buttons. I didn't acknowledge the call. I just listened as the voice repeated the exact words I had heard weeks earlier. But this time the voice added something new. Don't leave him again. The steering wheel felt slippery in my hands. Cold sweat dripped down my back. I should have ignored it. I absolutely should have ignored it. But then the radio hissed, and something whispered. Not through the speaker, but inside the cruiser itself, like it was sitting in the back seat leaning forward. Come back. I slammed the brakes so hard everything in the cab rattled. I turned around instantly, heart pounding, expecting God knows what. The back seat was empty. The windows fogged slightly from my own breath. But the air felt wrong, pressurized, like something invisible was sitting beside me. Mile marker 209 was 20 minutes away. I drove there anyway. The entire stretch was black. No moon, no wind, no distant car lights. The desert felt like a sealed room where sound couldn't escape. When I reached the marker, I slowed to a crawl. My headlights swept over the shoulder. Nothing. No cruiser, no badge, no sign of anything human. Then the radio clicked once, loud. The same metallic tapping I heard the first night. Tap, tap, tap. It came from the emergency lane on the right. I turned my spotlight toward the sound. At first, I saw nothing but rocks and brush. Then the beam shifted and illuminated something that made my heart slam into my ribs. A cruiser. The same old model, same faded blue stripe, same outdated light bar, parked in the exact same spot as before. But this time, the driver's door was open, wide open. I stepped out of my vehicle, boots crunching on the gravel. The desert around me felt frozen, like even the insects were holding their breath. My flashlight beam shook as I approached the old patrol car. The interior was the way I remembered, dust coating everything. The radio unit rusted over. The steering wheel cracked like old leather. Then I saw the hat, the same trooper's hat, same badge number, 1472. But the body that had been in the back seat before was gone. I swallowed hard, flashlight trembling as I scanned the ground. No footprints, no drag marks, not even a disturbance in the dust on the seats. Just gone. The radio on my chest burst alive. He's out. I spun toward the desert, sweeping my light across the darkness. Nothing. Only sagebrush and rock formations stretching forever. No movement, no breathing, no... Then something appeared in the corner of my beam. A shape. A silhouette standing 30 yards away. At first I thought it was a man. Maybe another officer. Maybe Curtis. Maybe someone lost. But as I focused the beam, the proportions sank into my stomach like a stone. The figure was too tall, limbs too long, shoulders too narrow. Like someone stretched a person upward without adjusting anything else. It didn't move. It didn't blink. It didn't breathe. Then my flashlight flickered. When the beam returned, the silhouette was 10 yards closer. I staggered back against the old cruiser, chest tight. My brain screamed to run, but my legs felt nailed to the ground. The air grew thicker, heavier, like something massive was pushing itself through the desert toward me. The radio whispered again, but the voice had changed. It wasn't empty anymore. It was angry. You left him. The figure was closer now, 15 feet away. Its outline rippled like its body didn't fully exist in one place. Then the ambient desert sounds died completely. No wind, no distant hum, nothing. A silence so total it hurt my ears. I raised my flashlight again, and for the first time the beam hit its face. There were no eyes, no mouth, no features. Just a smooth, cracked surface like aged clay, and pinned onto its chest. The badge 1472. The same badge I had found under my windshield. The thing took one single fluid step toward me. The cracked surface of its face tilted, as if examining me. The radio on my chest whispered its last message. Take his place. My legs unlocked. Instinct took over. I ran. I sprinted so fast I nearly tripped, boots tearing across the gravel as I flung myself into my cruiser. I slammed the door, locked it, started the engine, and floored the accelerator. The headlights bounced wildly as I tore down the highway, not daring to look in the mirrors, not daring to breathe until I reached town. When I finally stopped the car at a gas station miles away, the passenger side window was fogged from the inside. A handprint was pressed into the glass, but it wasn't human. It was too long, too narrow, with finger marks like someone had dragged talons down the inside of the window. I quit 2 days later. No notice, no explanation. I turned in my badge, my uniform, my cruiser. But the worst part, the part that never leaves me, a week after I left the job, a package arrived at my house with no return address. Inside was a radio handset from an old patrol cruiser, rusted, dented, dead. I picked it up without thinking, and the moment my fingers touched the mic, a voice hissed faintly from the speaker. Unit 7-3 requesting backup. Then after a long, shaking breath, your turn. I've been a highway patrol officer in Oklahoma for almost 8 years, and in that time I've seen almost every kind of late-night stupidity you can imagine. Drunks who think they're philosophers, teens who think they're invincible, couples who think the backseat is soundproof. But nothing absolutely nothing in my career ever prepared me for. The night I found the barefoot woman on Highway 74. It was just past 2 a.m., the sky moonless, and the air so still it felt like the whole world was holding its breath. Dispatch said multiple drivers had reported a woman walking along the shoulder, hugging herself, crying, refusing to look at anyone. I assumed it was drugs or a drunk who wandered off from some fight. Easy call. In and out. But when my headlights hit her, everything inside me tightened. She wasn't stumbling. She wasn't waving for help. She wasn't confused. She was standing perfectly still beside a mile marker, staring into a dark field like she was waiting for something in it to move. Her clothes were clean, jeans, navy sweatshirt, no jacket, no shoes. Her feet were scraped raw, but her clothes looked spotless, like she hadn't been out there long. That was the first thing that bothered me. The second was her breathing, shallow, fast, controlled in a way that didn't match hypothermia or intoxication. Controlled like someone trying not to make a sound. I stepped out of my cruiser slowly. "Ma'am, you all right?" She didn't turn. She didn't blink. She whispered one word so quietly I almost missed it. "Please." Not help. Not stop. Just, please. Like a plea with no direction. I walked closer, keeping my hands visible. When I put my jacket around her shoulders, she flinched. Not from me, but like she expected someone else's hand to grab her. She didn't resist when I guided her to the cruiser. No fight. No struggle. Just stiff obedience. The moment I closed the door behind her, I felt it. Something was terribly, terribly wrong. She wouldn't look up, not once. Her hands trembled in her lap. Her breathing stayed shallow, like she'd been running for a long time, but was too scared to say from what. I talked to her gently while pulling onto the road, asking for her name, if she was hurt, if someone was with her, but she didn't answer anything. 10 minutes into the drive, I noticed the first thing that made my stomach drop. She was acting differently in the reflections. In the rear-view mirror, she wasn't staring at her lap. She was staring at me. On the glossy radio panel, her reflection showed her mouth opening slightly, like she was trying to speak but couldn't. On the passenger window's faint reflection, she kept glancing toward the darkness outside. But when I looked back directly, she sat frozen, silent, staring at nothing. I thought I was imagining it at first. Stress, fatigue, shadows. But then she did something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand. Straight up. She mouthed something in the radio panel reflection, a word, one word. Here, I glanced back at her. She hadn't moved an inch, but her reflection mouthed it again. Here. My pulse spiked. I kept driving like nothing was wrong, kept my face steady, kept my breathing slow. I looked back into the mirror, pretending to adjust it. Her reflection mouthed a second phrase. "Don't stop." My throat tightened. Not, "Help me." Not, "Please." Not, "He's following, just don't stop." My instincts kicked in hard. Someone had put this woman through something so traumatic she couldn't speak directly. She was using micro-movements, reflection-only behavior because she was terrified of being overheard. I scanned the mirrors for any car behind us. Empty highway. Silent road. No headlights. But she kept mouthing, "He's here. He's here. He's here." I forced myself calm. I kept driving. Then I saw it. Not behind us, not ahead. To the right, deep in the field. My spotlight picked up a parked truck. Engine off. Lights off. Positioned perfectly to watch the road. A chill ran through me so hard my fingers went numb on the wheel. I didn't slow. I didn't turn. I didn't give any sign I had noticed. But the woman's reflection tensed. Her head tilted the smallest fraction toward that truck. Her breathing hitched. She recognized it. My chest squeezed painfully. Then something happened that I still can't explain in a calm voice. The backup camera flickered, just once. And for half a second I saw bright headlights behind me. When it stabilized, the highway was empty again. The woman's reflection mouthed a single, trembling word. "Run." I didn't run. I pressed my emergency alert button silently. Dispatch immediately crackled. "Unit 12, confirm emergency press." I didn't respond. I kept my eyes forward, kept my tone steady, kept driving. The woman's reflection snapped upward, her eyes wide, horrified. Her mouth shaped a sentence I felt more than read. He's in the cruiser. Everything inside me went ice cold. I didn't turn, didn't flinch, didn't let my breathing change. 'Cause I understood her now. She wasn't warning me about a truck. She wasn't warning me about someone following. She was telling me something much worse. The man she ran from wasn't behind us. He wasn't outside. He wasn't in another car. He was already inside my vehicle, and he had been the entire time. The moment those words formed in her reflection, "He's in the cruiser," my entire body reacted before my mind did. Every instinct I'd trained, every survival reflex I'd ever built kicked in at once. I didn't move my head. I didn't check the back. I didn't breathe any louder than normal. The fastest way to die in a confined space is to acknowledge the threat before you're ready. I kept my hands on the wheel and eased my foot off the gas like I was simply relaxing into the drive. But inside, my pulse was hammering so violently, I felt each heartbeat in my throat. There are only two places someone can hide in my cruiser: behind the rear seat backboard, or wedged in that tiny gap beneath it. A space barely wide enough for a grown man if he twists his body just right. I'd always heard stories of suspects hiding in other officers' patrol cars, drug runners, fugitives, domestic abusers who slip into unlocked vehicles while an officer's attention is on someone else. I never thought it would be me. I never thought it would be tonight. I shifted slightly and pretended to adjust my seat, all while listening for anything. Breathing, cloth shifting, metal tapping. At first I heard nothing. Then I felt it. Not a sound. A vibration. The faintest pressure against the interior panel behind me. Someone was bracing themselves. Preparing. The woman's reflection jolted, her eyes locked downward toward the floor behind my seat. Her lips barely moved. Knife. My throat tightened. My gun was holstered, useless if the man lunged forward first. I tilted the rearview mirror with 2 fingers. Careful, slow, non-threatening. Just enough to widen the angle. And there it was. A hand. Filthy. Scraped. Clutching something metallic so tightly his knuckles were white. He was sliding it through the seat seam inch by inch, waiting for the right moment, waiting for my neck to be in the exact position he needed. I didn't think, I acted. I slammed the brakes hard and yanked the steering wheel left. The cruiser jerked violently. The world tilted. The suspect didn't see it coming. His body slammed against the metal partition with a dull thud. The woman screamed. I didn't have the luxury. I stomped the accelerator now, surging forward into the open stretch. The man behind me groaned, dazed, but he wasn't down. He shifted again, raging, desperate. I had less than 10 seconds before he recovered and tried again. My backup button alert was still active. Backup was coming, but not fast enough. I needed to disable him now. Still gripping the wheel with my left hand, I reached down with my right and flicked open the center console. I didn't grab my gun. I grabbed the flare launcher. It wasn't lethal, but at point-blank range, it would blind, disable, save my life. I needed him exposed. I jerked the wheel again, right this time. The cruiser fishtailed hard. The man tumbled forward in the wedge, slamming into the seat seam. His knife clattered to the floor. I didn't hesitate. I twisted in my seat, aimed blindly, and fired the flare behind me. A red flash exploded in the cramped space. The man screamed, a guttural, panicked sound, and flailed backward, clawing at his clothes as the flare sputtered and smoked. I threw open my door, jumped out, circled around, and yanked the back door open. The woman scrambled out immediately, collapsing into my arms, shaking, uncontrollably. The man behind the seat was still thrashing, disoriented. I kept him pinned from the outside until backup barreled onto the scene 3 minutes later. He fought like someone whose entire world depended on escape. Officers wrestled him onto the pavement and cuffed him while he shrieked accusations and nonsense. The The woman just sobbed into my chest. Not relief, not safety, just pure exhaustion. It took hours of interviews before the full story emerged. She had been abducted from her home, not randomly. He knew her. He followed her for weeks. He waited until her husband left late one night. When she escaped barefoot into the woods and reached the road, he slipped into my cruiser when I approached her. He hid. He waited for darkness. He intended to kill both of us. But the part that stayed with me, the part that still hits me hardest, was what she said in the interview room days later. She told us her husband wasn't home that night because he was away on a work trip. But her daughter was at home with her when she was abducted. And when she whispered that heartbreaking line to me in the back seat, "Please don't make him mad," she wasn't talking about him killing her. She was talking about him going back to her daughter before she could warn anyone. When officers arrived at the woman's house after the arrest, they found her daughter hiding in a closet, unharmed but terrified, clutching a phone she was too scared to use. The girl asked the officers a single question: "Did my mom save me?" They told her yes, but they didn't tell her the truth. Her mom saved her by staying silent. Her mom saved her by enduring hell. Her mom saved her by surviving long enough to get into my cruiser. Her mom saved her by never once calling out, even when she could have. Her mom saved her by keeping the monster focused on her, not her child. And if I'd been 30 seconds slower, if I hadn't read her fear right, if I'd missed even one clue, that little girl would have been orphaned. I still drive that stretch at night. Every time, I remember the reflection of the hitchhiker's lips shaping words she never said out loud. Every time, I remember the tiny tremors in her hands. Every time, I remember how she saved her daughter without speaking a single full sentence. People think police work is about chasing danger, but sometimes it's about recognizing a terror someone is too afraid to say out loud. And the silence of that woman, the trembling fear, the warning she hid in glances and reflections, saved more than her own life. It saved a little girl from a nightmare she never knew was coming. And I'll never forget the look on her face when she was reunited with her daughter. Not relief, not joy, just this soft, breaking whisper. I didn't think I'd make it in time. But she did, and it cost her everything. I've pulled over hundreds of speeding cars in my career, but the night I stopped that gray minivan on Route 77 will stay with me long after I'm too old to put on a uniform. Not because of the driver, not because of the chase, but because of the little girl sitting in the back seat and the way she looked at me, like she had been waiting her entire life for someone to finally see her. It was almost 3 a.m. when the van blew past me doing close to 80 in a 55. No swerving, no drifting, just fast. Too fast for a minivan with out-of-state plates. So I lit it up and pulled out. The van didn't even pretend to slow gradually. It just stopped, immediately, perfectly, as if the driver was prepared for this. That was the first thing that made my stomach tighten. I approached on the passenger side with my flashlight low. The driver, a man in his late 40s, was already staring straight ahead, hands at 10 and 2. Calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that isn't natural. The kind that's practiced. "Evening," I said. "Reason for the speed?" "Just tired, officer," he replied smoothly. "Trying to get home." His voice was steady, polite, rehearsed. But then I shined my light into the back seat, and everything in my body locked up. A little girl was sitting back there. She looked 8, maybe 9. Blonde hair, pink sweater, seatbelt tight across her chest. She wasn't asleep. She wasn't drooping. She wasn't even blinking. She was staring directly at me, and the second my light hit her, her eyes widened, not like she was startled, but like she'd just seen her chance, and wasn't sure whether grabbing it would save her or kill her. "Hey there," I said softly. "You okay?" No answer. No nod, no shake of the head, just a tiny trembling inhale. I scanned her carefully without making it obvious. Her wrists were slightly reddened, not wounds, pressure marks. Her seatbelt was cinched too tight. The indentation around her torso showed she hadn't moved in a long time. Her sweater sleeves were tugged low, covering more than they needed to. Everything looked wrong. I shifted my light lower and caught something under the driver's seat. A blanket corner. Crumpled. Dark. A patch of discoloration on it. Not enough for gore. Not enough to violate YouTube rules. Just enough to scream, "This doesn't belong here." My instincts roared. "Sir," I said, keeping my tone neutral, "I'm going to have you step out of the vehicle." His face tightened for a fraction of a second before he forced another smile. Of course. He stepped out. Smooth. Careful. Cooperative. But his eyes flicked toward his daughter. Quick, sharp, warning. I opened the back door. The girl flinched so hard she nearly folded into herself. I crouched low. "Sweetheart," I whispered. "You're safe. You can talk to me." She didn't look up. She just shook her head. Not telling me no, telling me she wasn't allowed. Her tiny lips parted. She whispered one terrified sentence that hit me like a punch. "Please don't make him mad. Not, please help. Not, please save me. Just don't make him mad." That's what abused children say when the danger isn't coming. It's already here. My blood went cold. "Is he your dad?" I whispered. Her lip trembled. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She whispered, "He has my mommy." I stepped back like someone had shoved me. Suddenly, everything fit. The perfect stop. The too calm driver. The girl's terror. The speed. The out-of-state plate. The man wasn't running from something. He was running to something. He had the mother hidden somewhere, alive. For now. I walked the father a few steps away from the van. "I need to ask you a few more questions." His polite mask fell away instantly. No. Flat. Simple. Deadly. My thumb slid onto my emergency button. Dispatch chirped. "Unit 87, confirm emergency press." I kept my voice level. Negative. Checking a plate. A lie. A bait. I needed the cavalry without this man realizing he'd just been exposed. He stared at me. Cold calculation behind his eyes. For the first time, he looked like what he really was. A man who had already hurt someone he loved. A man who had leverage. A man who believed he could still win. I saw his next movement before he made it. His eyes flicked toward the van, toward the girl, toward the only thing he had left to bargain with. And that was the moment I realized the truth. This man wasn't scared of going to jail. He was scared of running out of time. I put my hand on my holster. "Where is the mother?" I asked quietly. His jaw flexed. He didn't answer. That was enough. I reached for my cuffs. He spun, not away, toward the van, toward the girl. She screamed. Not a loud scream. A small, tight, hopeless sound like she had seen this play out many times and never once won. I lunged and grabbed him by the arm. He fought harder than anyone I'd ever encountered, not to escape, but to reach her. My radio fell, clattering across the asphalt. I slammed him against the van as his daughter sobbed inside it. He writhed under me with a strength born from pure desperation. He wasn't fighting for freedom. He was fighting because he believed if we reached the mother before he acted, he would lose everything. And he was ready to do something irreversible to prevent that. Backup sirens lit the horizon just as he swung backward, trying to break my grip. I forced him down hard, pinning him to the gravel as he thrashed. His daughter cried quietly, her small voice shaking with a terror I can't forget. She whispered through the window, "My mommy's going to die." Part of me broke right there. I cuffed him, dragged him up, and shoved him into the cruiser, bruised and roaring threats. I opened the van door, and the girl collapsed into me, shaking, gripping, my uniform, like she had been drowning and finally found something to hold on to. I carried her away from the van, away from him, away from the nightmare she had been surviving in silence. As backup pulled up, one officer looked at me and asked quietly, "What the hell's going on?" I didn't answer, because all I could think about was the mother, alive, somewhere, counting on us, running out of time. I pushed deeper into the woods, ignoring protocol, and ignoring the officer calling after me. Something in me said she was close, that every second I hesitated was a second her daughter would never get back. My flashlight cut through the underbrush, glinting off broken branches, trampled grass, and footprints that didn't belong to any of us. Then I saw a woman's running shoe lying half buried under a cluster of dead leaves, the sole bent in a way that meant she'd either kicked it off or lost it struggling. I radioed the Discovery in and kept moving, my pulse pounding in my ears as the forest thickened around me. A few yards further, I found a shallow drag mark in the dirt leading toward a narrow creek. My light followed it, and that's when I saw her lying on her side near the water's edge, her hands tied, her hair matted, her body completely still. I rushed to her and dropped to my knees, tearing off my gloves with my teeth so I could check her pulse. Her skin was cold, too cold, and when I rolled her gently onto her back, her eyes stared past me at nothing. No breath, no heartbeat, nothing. She had been gone for minutes, maybe an hour, but definitely before I ever stopped the van. I sat back in the mud for a moment, my stomach dropping into a kind of heaviness I can't explain. I've delivered death notifications before, but this one felt different. This wasn't just a victim. This was a mother who fought hard enough for her daughter to survive long enough to look me in the eyes and beg me not to make him angry. She had run. She had resisted. She had stalled him just enough for her daughter to be saved. And she died alone in the dark for it. When I walked out of the woods carrying her body, the scene went silent. Officers lowered their flashlights. One of them stepped forward to take her from me, but I didn't let go until I reached the ambulance. The girl was sitting on the bumper of a patrol car wrapped in a blanket, her tiny face blotchy from crying, her hands fisting the fleece like she was holding it together by threads. She looked at me the moment she sensed something was wrong. Kids always know. Their eyes find the truth before anyone says it out loud. I knelt in front of her, my uniform still damp from the creek, dirt streaked across my sleeves, and I tried to find words that felt human enough for what she deserved. But my voice wouldn't come. I didn't even have to speak. She looked past me, saw the stretcher being rolled toward the ambulance, and her entire world collapsed in a single sound I will hear until the day I die. She screamed for her mother, clawing out of the sergeant's hands, running toward the medics until an officer caught her. She fought them harder than her father fought us. When they finally got her calmed enough to breathe, she curled into a ball against the side of the patrol car, whispering, she said she'd come back. That broke me more than anything else that night, because the truth was the mother did come back, just not alive. She came back in the only way she could, by holding on long enough to keep her daughter safe, even if it meant she wouldn't survive for the ending. I stayed with the girl until child services arrived, sitting beside her on the curb while she cried into my sleeve. She kept asking me if her mother knew she loved her. I told her yes, because there wasn't a doubt in my mind. Any woman who endured what she did, who refused to speak a word that might trigger the man who had her tied up in the woods, who kept her child quiet and small and out of danger long enough for help to arrive. There's no universe where that woman didn't know her daughter loved her. When they finally took the girl away, she reached for me one last time, her fingers barely brushing my hand. "Thank you for finding her," she whispered. I couldn't answer. Not because I didn't want to, but because I knew the truth she would never have to hear. I hadn't found her in time. Her mother saved her, not me. All I did was pull over a speeding van and show up too late. But I'll never forget the moment the girl looked at me with those tear-filled eyes, searching for something she could hold on to. I realized then that this job doesn't always let you be the hero. Sometimes it forces you to be the witness. The one who arrives after the worst part has already happened. The one who carries a child's grief on your uniform long after the sun rises. And some nights, when I'm sitting alone in my cruiser on a quiet stretch of highway, I swear I can still hear her tiny voice whispering, "Please don't make him mad," echoing through the dark like a warning I'll never ignore again. I've taken silent 911 calls before. Pocket dials, glitchy phones, scared kids who don't know what to say. But the one that pinged off mile marker 142 at 2:47 a.m. felt wrong. The second dispatch read the coordinates aloud. You learn to hear it in their voice, the tension they try to hide. Unit 23, be advised. Caller remained on the line for over 4 minutes. No background noise, no disconnect. 4 minutes of silence isn't a misdial. 4 minutes is someone trying to stay alive without letting whoever they're hiding from hear them breathe. I hit my lights and sped out there faster than I'd admit in a report. The stretch around 142 is nothing but pine trees, old fencing, and the occasional abandoned billboard. It's the kind of place where cell service flickers like dying light bulbs. When I pulled onto the shoulder, I saw the SUV immediately, silver, front end smashed into a drainage ditch, all 4 doors closed, headlights still on but dim. It wasn't a fresh crash. The steam had already stopped rising, but the driver's window was cracked, and when I walked up with my flashlight raised, I saw her inside. A woman in her mid-30s, seatbelt on, hands gripping the wheel so hard her knuckles were white. Not injured, not unconscious, just frozen. "Ma'am," I said gently, "can you hear me?" Her eyes snapped toward me so fast it made my heart jolt. She didn't speak, didn't roll down the window. She just shook her head violently and mouthed a single word, "No." Then she pointed downward toward her lap. I followed the direction and saw her phone lying face up in the center console, still on the call screen. She was the silent caller. "Are you hurt?" I asked, keeping my voice calm. She shook her head again, sharp, frantic. Her breaths were shallow and quick, like she was trying not to inhale too loudly. Her gaze kept darting, not toward the woods, not toward the road, but toward the back seat, as if checking whether something back there had moved. I angled my flashlight inside but didn't point it all the way. I didn't want to spook her. "Ma'am, is someone else in the vehicle?" I asked. She didn't nod. She didn't shake her head. She just stiffened, her body going rigid like the question itself might trigger something terrible. Slowly, without turning her head, she raised her hand off the steering wheel an inch and traced a trembling circle in the air over her shoulder. Then she pressed her finger to her lips. "Be quiet. Don't speak. Don't call attention." That's what she was telling me. Every part of her posture screamed, "He's still here. Don't make him mad." My pulse started pounding. I moved to the rear passenger side door, staying low and keeping my boots off gravel as much as I could. I checked the handle. Locked. The windows were tinted just enough that my flashlight bounced off instead of illuminating anything inside. I circled the SUV again, scanning for footprints, drag marks, anything. That's when I saw it. On the driver's side doorframe just below the latch, a single deep indentation. A knee mark. Someone had pinned their weight there recently. Someone large, and someone patient enough to hold that position long enough to intimidate the hell out of the woman inside. I went back to her window. "Ma'am," I whispered, "I'm going to get you out, but I need you to unlock the door." She didn't move, didn't blink, just mouthed another word. "Wait." Her eyes flicked past me toward the tree line behind my cruiser. I turned casually, pretending to adjust my radio, and angled my body so I could sweep the woods with my peripheral vision. That's when I saw the faintest glint of a reflection, just a sliver of something metallic catching my headlights deeper in the trees. Not a flashlight, not an animal. Something held steady at chest height. Someone watching. Someone who hadn't run when he heard my sirens. Someone waiting for his moment. I went cold all over. I pretended not to notice, speaking softly as if nothing was wrong. "Ma'am, on my count, I need you to unlock the door and crawl toward me. Stay low. Don't look back." She squeezed the steering wheel so tightly it creaked. For a moment, she didn't move at all. Then, with a tiny tremor, her thumb slid toward the door lock. I counted quietly. 3, 2. Before I said 1, her eyes widened in raw terror, and she shook her head sharply. Not fear of me. Fear of what she was looking at over my shoulder. Someone had stepped closer. I didn't turn. My blood roared in my ears, every instinct screaming that if I spun around now, I'd give away the only advantage I had left. Instead, I stepped slightly to the side, blocking her line of sight and forcing whatever she was watching to either emerge or lose visual contact with her. The woods stayed still. Too still. I clicked my radio twice, the silent code we use for immediate backup. The moment I did, the woman did something that will haunt me until the day I stop wearing a badge. She lifted both hands slowly off the wheel, palms up, in a gesture that looked like surrender, and mouthed the words, "He's coming." Not he's here, not he's watching. He's coming. Meaning he hadn't made his move yet. But he was about to. I didn't wait another second. I yanked the door handle, shattered the window with my baton when it didn't unlock fast enough, swept my arm through broken glass, grabbed her under the arms, and pulled her out of the SUV with one motion. She didn't resist. She collapsed into me, trembling hard enough that her teeth chattered. Then the sound came. Not a shout. Not footsteps. Not a voice. A soft, deliberate clicking from the woods, like someone testing a lighter. One click. Then another. Then another. Steady, taunting, rhythmically patient. The woman buried her face into my vest. "He does that," she whispered into my shirt in a voice so tiny it didn't sound human. "He clicks it right before he hurts you." My entire body went rigid. Whoever he wasn't running. He wasn't panicking. He wasn't fleeing. He was enjoying this. And he wanted me to come find him. The clicking stopped the moment I pulled the woman behind my cruiser, like whoever was out there didn't want to blow the illusion that he had vanished. I radioed in her condition and requested K9, thermal aviation, anything on wheels or wings. The dispatcher heard something in my tone because she didn't ask questions. She just said, "Units en route," in a voice tight enough to confirm she sensed things were about to get ugly. The woman kept shaking, gripping the back of my vest like a child afraid to be left alone for even a breath. When I asked her softly where he was, she whispered, "He knew you'd come. He said he wanted an officer this time." My stomach twisted so hard it felt like it hit my ribs. I eased her into the back of another patrol car when the first backup arrived, trying to keep my body between her and the forest. She didn't stop shaking until the door shut, but even then her eyes stayed fixed on the tree line, as if she expected him to step out at any second. I handed her phone to the sergeant, who took one look at the 4-minute silent call and muttered, "Jesus." He asked me what we were dealing with. I didn't answer immediately, because I wasn't sure. Was this a stalker, a road rage attack, a kidnapping gone wrong, or someone who just hunted in the dark and waited for unlucky victims to pass through? We spread out along the ditch first. The crash site looked wrong from the outside. No skid marks, no braking attempt. The SUV went straight into the ditch like she had jerked the wheel to escape something inside or next to the car. Inside the vehicle, we found fingerprints smeared across the inside of the rear door. Not prints, drag marks, as if someone had been hanging onto the handle trying to force it open. The woman had been trapped in there longer than just the crash, and she wasn't alone. 10 minutes passed. No sound, no movement. The woods stayed unnervingly quiet, the way they do when predators move through them. When K9 arrived, I expected the dog to explode toward the trees, like they normally do with active suspects. Instead, the moment his paws hit the dirt, he froze, hackles raised, tail tucked, a low growl vibrating from his chest. The handler tried guiding him forward, but the dog refused, pulling backward so hard it nearly tore the lead from the handler's hand. That was worse than barking. Dogs aren't scared of criminals, but something in the woods had terrified him. "I don't like this," the sergeant said, quietly beside me. Neither did I. Every instinct in my body told me the same thing. This man wasn't escaping. He was circling, watching, waiting for someone to separate from the group long enough to become the new target. That meant we weren't hunting him. He was hunting us. A deputy found the first sign he left behind, a crushed cigarette on a fallen log near the tree line. Fresh, still warm. Another officer found a torn scrap of fabric snagged on a branch, like he'd slipped through there in a hurry. We followed the trail deeper, flashlights sweeping every shadow. That's when I saw it. Another clicking spark, just for a split second far ahead between two trees, like someone flicking a lighter open and shut, teasing us. We pushed forward, weapons drawn. The air smelled off, like sweat and adrenaline, sharp and metallic, the scent people give off when their body is flooded with fear or aggression. Then the woman's voice came faintly from behind us, muffled through the cruiser's closed door. "Don't go in there. Please." But we were already committed. The clicking kept moving, deeper and deeper, slow enough to lure us but fast enough to stay out of reach. Then it stopped completely. We stood in a clearing lit only by our flashlights, all of us listening, waiting. The woods were silent again. Too silent. I felt a drop of sweat run down my spine. Something was wrong. I raised my light just slightly, and that's when I found it. A rope tied to a tree at chest height, a trip line. And beneath it, a narrow pit concealed by branches, freshly carved, freshly dug, a trap. He had been leading us here the entire time. The sergeant cursed under his breath. "Back out, now." We moved slowly, eyes scanning every direction. That's when a sound crackled over the radio in my vest. Not dispatch, not an officer, not feedback. Breathing, slow, heavy, close. Someone was holding a radio. Someone tuned into our channel. Then a voice whispered through the static, low and amused. "You shouldn't have taken her out of the car." Every officer whipped around at once, scanning the dark. But the voice didn't repeat. It didn't need to. That single sentence told us everything. It wasn't an accident. He wanted the woman back. He had been waiting for her to be alone. And we had taken away his prize. We pushed back toward the road, tightening formation. I moved ahead to get to the woman first. But before I even reached the cruiser, I saw the sergeant sprint toward it. The back door was open, wide open. The woman was gone. The officer inside the car swore he hadn't opened it, hadn't moved, hadn't looked away. He said she must have unlocked it from the inside and run. But I knew better. Her hands were trembling so hard earlier, she could barely hold her phone. She wouldn't have left the safety of the vehicle, not willingly. We fanned out, searching frantically along the shoulder. I found footprints in the dirt only a few feet from the cruiser, small ones, hers, and next to them, deeper ones. Heavy. Fast. Dragged impressions between them, where she had stumbled. I followed them to the edge of the woods, flashlight shaking, slightly in my grip. The trail stopped at a tree, a smooth, clean trunk. Nothing at its base, but carved into the bark was a message, fresh and ragged. "You talk too loud." My stomach dropped. Every hair on my body stood up. He had been close enough to hear us. Close enough to grab her. Close enough to carve this while we were only 100 feet away. We searched until sunrise. We found nothing. No body. No clothing. No blood. Not even another footprint. Just the shattered window of her SUV and the dead, suffocating silence of the woods. To this day, the woman has never been found. Sometimes I replay the radio static in my head, that slow breathing that didn't belong to a single one of us. And sometimes, on late-night patrols, I swear I hear the same quiet clicking in distant tree lines. A patient rhythm, waiting for another moment of silence. What haunts me more than anything is the thought I can't shake. He didn't take her to kill her. He took her because I interrupted him. He took her to finish what he started. And I know one day, another silent 911 call will ping off another mile marker. And by the time we get there, he'll already be waiting. There are shifts you forget the minute they end, and then there are shifts that embed themselves under your ribs forever. The night I found the kid by mile marker 318 wasn't the scariest moment of my career at first glance, but it became the one that changed me the most. It was 4 a.m., that dead stretch of night where even the crickets stop singing and the road feels hollow, like the world is on pause. I was cruising the shoulder with my window cracked, letting the cold air keep me awake, when my headlights caught a shape ahead. Small, thin, moving strangely. At first, I thought it was an animal limping along the asphalt, but then it stood upright, turned toward me, and I saw a child, barefoot, alone, shaking. I hit the brakes harder than I should have. My cruiser jerked to a stop 15 feet from him. The boy didn't run. He didn't wave for help either. He just stood there, arms wrapped tight around himself, staring like he wasn't sure whether I was real or another nightmare coming out of the dark. Even from a distance, something about him felt wrong. Not physically, but emotionally. Kids who get lost usually cry or look panicked, or run towards you. This kid looked like he had been holding his breath for hours, like if he made even the slightest sound, something terrible would hear him. I stepped out slowly, palms visible. "Hey, buddy," I said softly. "I'm here to help. Are you hurt?" No response, no nod, no shake of the head. Just wide eyes. Huge, terrified, locked onto mine like he was evaluating if I could protect him quickly enough. The cold air slashed across his bare legs, and he shivered hard, but he didn't move closer. His feet were scraped raw but not bleeding, just dirty and stiff, like he'd been running over gravel or roots for a long time. He was maybe 8 years old, 9 at most. Pajama shorts, oversized t-shirt, no shoes, no jacket. In no way he walked out here voluntarily. When I crouched down, he took half a step back, almost like someone had taught him to fear anyone coming at him from above. I lowered myself even more, keeping my posture soft. "Can you tell me your name?" I asked. The boy's lip trembled. He opened his mouth like he wanted to answer, but the sound never came out. His whole body tensed instead, and he darted a glance over his shoulder into the darkness behind him. That glance told me everything I needed to know. Someone was out there. I straightened slowly. "Is someone in the woods?" His reaction was immediate. His breathing hitched, his hands tightened, and he shook his head so violently it almost looked like convulsing. Not because the answer was no, but because he didn't want me asking that question loudly. I didn't take another step toward him. I knew the difference between a child who didn't trust strangers and a child who had been running for his life. So I stayed exactly where I was and radioed dispatch quietly. Unit 12, possible missing juvenile, approximately 8, non-verbal, extremely frightened, requesting backup and EMS. Send units to 318. I lowered my voice even further because the boy was staring at my radio like it was a gun going off. The sound itself seemed to terrify him. When I reached to take my jacket off and wrap him in it, he suddenly moved. For the first time. He ran at me, not to hug me or for comfort, but to stop me. He grabbed my sleeve with both hands, eyes huge with panic, tugging as if my jacket was the worst thing I could touch. I froze, confused. Then I saw it. His gaze wasn't on me. It was fixed on the ditch beside us, on the drainage opening beneath the road. A large concrete pipe, about 4 feet tall, leading into blackness. The boy pointed, not a full arm movement, just a small trembling gesture, and then pressed his face into my sleeve, as if hiding from whatever memory lived inside that tunnel. I angled my flashlight toward the pipe. A dull, damp breath of cold air drifted out. My beam reached 5 feet in before the darkness ate it. I lowered myself slightly and listened. And then I heard it. A thud. A soft, muted, deliberate thud from inside the pipe. Not the scuttle of an animal, not shifting dirt. Something heavier. I felt the boy's grip tighten on my sleeve. When I looked down, he was shaking so hard the tremors traveled up my arm. "Did you come from there?" I whispered. He didn't answer, but the way he stared at the pipe made my stomach sink like a stone dropping into deep water. Then he did something that twisted my gut. He tapped my arm with 2 fingers. Then again, tap, tap, tap. A rhythm, a pattern, something he knew, or something he heard. Inside the pipe, there was silence again. I positioned myself between the boy and the drainage opening. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're safe now. Nobody's going to hurt you." But even as I said it, I didn't fully believe it. Kids don't run barefoot into the night unless the alternative is worse. And whatever he ran from hadn't stayed behind. Backup chirped through my radio. Units were 7 minutes out. That felt like a lifetime. The boy clung to my vest like I was the only person on earth who could keep him alive, and I kept my flashlight trained on the pipe, waiting to see if I had imagined the sound. I hadn't. This time, instead of a thud, I saw movement. A pair of fingertips, just fingertips, curling around the concrete lip inside the pipe. Pale, dirty, motionless. They didn't wave. They didn't reach outward. They just held the edge, as if whoever they belonged to was deciding whether to reveal the rest of himself or wait for a better moment. The kid whimpered. A tiny sound he immediately slapped his hand over to contain. His entire body shook violently against my leg. I lowered my free hand and rested it gently on his back. "I've got you," I whispered, though everything inside me screamed that we were seconds away from something bad. The fingers slipped back into darkness, not retreating, repositioning. The boy tugged the bottom of my vest, frantically trying to get my attention, and pointed again, this time toward the far side of the ditch near a cluster of brush. I swept my flashlight there and saw disturbed grass, footprints, larger ones, fresh ones. Someone had climbed out of the pipe recently and moved into the underbrush. He wasn't in the tunnel anymore. He was somewhere in the dark, watching us. I lifted the boy carefully into my arms and back toward my cruiser, never taking my eyes off the ditch. The moment we reached the vehicle, I locked him inside and told him to keep his head down. He listened immediately, ducking below the window line like his life depended on it. Then, as I closed the door, I heard it. A sound from the woods, not footsteps, not breathing, not talking. 3 soft taps. Tap, tap, tap. The exact rhythm the boy had tapped on my arm. I didn't draw my weapon yet. I didn't move toward the sound. I didn't make a sound at all. I just positioned myself between my cruiser and the ditch and let the silence stretch, waiting for the next move. Whoever was out there had followed this kid out of the tunnels. Whoever was out there had watched him escape. Whoever was out there had waited for someone else to find him. And now he was testing us. Backup was still 5 minutes out. And the boy was looking at me through the cruiser window with this wide-eyed, trembling hope, like he was silently asking, "Are you fast enough to save me twice?" The taps echoed again, this time closer. The tapping didn't echo like a normal sound. It felt close, too close, like it was coming from a spot just out of the flashlight's reach. 3 soft taps. A pause, then 3 more. It was deliberate, spaced out, rhythmic, a signal, not an accident. I stood perfectly still, one hand on my holster, the other hovering near my radio. The boy watched me through the cruiser window, with his head half hidden below the seat line, his tiny fingers gripping the door handle from the inside like he was preparing for the worst. In that moment, I realized he wasn't tapping earlier because he was scared of the rhythm. He tapped because it was a warning, a pattern he knew too well. I swept my light toward the woods, slow, careful. The beam cut through branches and shadow until it landed on something that made my stomach flip. A small metal can hung from a branch, with fishing line, swaying slightly. Another can hung 10 feet to the right, and another by the ditch. Primitive alarms. Someone had set up a perimeter around the drainage tunnels. Someone had lived out here long enough to create a system designed to warn him when anyone, child or adult, entered or left. The tapping stopped. Then a new sound emerged, softer and more chilling. Breathing, not panicked, not rushed, controlled. From deep inside the brush, I leveled my flashlight toward the sound, but the moment the beam reached the area, the breathing went silent. Whoever was out there was waiting for me to step away from the cruiser. He knew the child was inside. He knew the child had escaped. And he wasn't running. He was circling. I keyed my radio quickly, whispering, "Unit 12 to all incoming, be advised. Suspect is mobile. Perimeter of primitive alarms found. Likely transitional encampment. ETA?" Backup replied, 2 minutes out. 2 minutes. 2 minutes felt like 2 lifetimes, when you know someone is watching you from cover. A rustle to my left made me turn. A shadow moved between the trees, low and fast. Not a deer, not an animal. Human. I pulled my weapon, but I kept my voice steady and calm. not wanting to escalate the panic for the boy in the cruiser. "Come out," I said quietly. "You're not going to get to him again." The woods absorbed my words and gave nothing back. Then the boy's hand slapped the window. I spun around. His face was pale, eyes wide with terror. He pointed frantically at the passenger side of my cruiser. My flashlight snapped toward that direction. At first, I saw nothing but gravel and ditch. Then I saw a crouched silhouette rising slowly from behind the guardrail, one deliberate inch at a time. Tall, thin, matted hair, clothes dark with dirt. His face was partially obscured, but his eyes caught my light. Or he wasn't charging. He wasn't running. He was studying me, calculating. Then he stepped forward, and I finally understood why the kid had been so scared. There was no rage in the man's face, no madness, no wild desperation. He looked calm, focused, like someone who had done this before and knew exactly how long he could play the game before losing. He took another step out of the shadows, and for a heartbeat, it was just the two of us in the cold glow of my flashlight, neither of us blinking. Then he moved, fast. He sprinted toward the culvert opening, not me, not the cruiser, but the entrance back to his tunnel system. The place he knew like the back of his hand. The place the kid must have escaped from. I knew if he got inside, we'd lose him. These tunnels ran under the interstate, branching through drainage channels and maintenance corridors that could take weeks to fully search. Every instinct in my body screamed that he was heading back to whatever he had in there. Supplies, gear, maybe even other victims. I ran, hard. Gravel tore under my boots as I closed the distance between us. The man reached the pipe seconds before I did, but I grabbed his ankle and yanked with everything I had. He hit the concrete with his hands first, catching himself, trying to pull inside. He kicked back wildly, aiming for my face. His heel grazed my jaw, sending a shock up my skull. The boy screamed inside the cruiser. I tightened my grip, braced my feet, and pulled again. He snarled. Not a sound of anger, but effort. Animal effort. He clawed at the concrete, lip, trying to drag himself deeper. But I wasn't about to let him slip away into the darkness where 100 officers wouldn't find him until spring. Backup sirens wailed in the distance. The man heard them. He twisted suddenly, using the tunnel wall to shove himself backward out of my grip so he could get room to sprint deeper. I lunged, catching his shirt collar with one hand and the back of his knee with the other. He writhed, kicked, twisted. But for once, adrenaline favored me. I dragged him out fully and slammed him onto the gravel. He tried to reach for his waistband. God knows what he thought he'd get. But I pinned his arms to the ground with my knees and cuffed him while he thrashed. When backup arrived, they helped wrestle him into a unit. He didn't scream. He didn't plead. He didn't even look angry. He just stared at the cruiser where the boy was sitting, his expression empty and cold, like he was memorizing the child's face. I opened the back door and knelt beside the kid. He flinched at first, then recognized me and threw his arms around my neck, clinging so tightly he nearly cut off my air. "It's okay," I whispered. "You're safe now. He's not going to hurt you, I promise." He didn't cry. He just sank into me with this trembling relief that broke me more than any tear ever could. When EMS arrived, the boy didn't want to let go of my vest. So I climbed into the ambulance with him and sat beside him the entire ride. He leaned against me, small and exhausted, mumbling something I couldn't hear. The medic listened closely and said softly, "He's saying thank you." Later at the hospital, the boy's mother arrived, running down the hall barefoot, her robe still tied crooked from being ripped out of bed by officers who'd located her through missing child records. When she saw her son sitting on the bed, alive, safe, wrapped in a blanket, her entire body collapsed with relief. She dropped to her knees, sobbing as she pulled him into her arms. He held onto her, like he'd never let go again. I stepped back and watched them, feeling the weight of the night's fear melt off my shoulders. The boy was safe. The monster who hunted him wasn't getting another chance. There were no funerals to plan, no bodies to recover, no hollow endings where we showed up too late. Just a child reunited with his mother, just a family stitched back together. Just one night where, for once, the dark didn't win. I've made 1,000 traffic stops in my career, and every academy instructor says the same thing. There's no such thing as a routine stop, but you don't truly understand what that means until you run into the stop that ruins your ability to ever relax again. Until the day the world teaches you that the most dangerous monsters don't hide in the woods or in abandoned buildings. They hide in plain sight, behind polite smiles, in cars that look like any other car on the highway. It was just after 11 p.m., warm night, clear road, light traffic. I'd been positioned on the westbound shoulder, running speed enforcement, when a silver sedan blew past me at almost 90. The kind of reckless speed that makes you think the driver is drunk or angry or running from something. I pulled out, lit up my overheads, and the car slowed immediately. No evasive maneuvers, no weaving, nothing. It eased onto the shoulder, like the driver had been expecting me. When I approached the window, the driver already had both hands on the wheel, smiling politely. Mid-40s, clean-shaven, button-down shirt, wedding ring, perfectly calm. "Evening, officer," he said with an easy tone. "Sorry about the speed. Long day, late getting home." His voice had that friendly, practiced warmth people use in customer service jobs. If I hadn't already been on edge from the speed, I might have believed him. But the girl in the back seat made that impossible. She was maybe 16, sitting stiff and upright, knees pressed together, hands folded so tightly the knuckles were white. Her eyes stayed locked on mine the entire time, wide, pleading, terrified. Then she did something small. So small most people would have missed it. She mouthed 2 words without making a sound. "Don't. Let him. Go." My stomach dropped. I kept my tone neutral. "Sir, can I see license, registration, proof of insurance?" He passed them over without hesitation. Everything about him was normal. No shakes, no sweat, no stutter, no signs of intoxication or drugs. The paperwork matched the car. Clean address, clean record. He smiled again. "Is something wrong, officer?" I didn't answer him. I leaned slightly to get a better look at the girl. She held my gaze with this raw desperation, her eyes flicking between me and the driver like she was begging me to understand something she couldn't say out loud. I gave her the smallest nod I could manage without alerting him, and she swallowed hard, as if forcing herself not to cry. "Sir," I said calmly, "I'm going to ask you to turn off the engine." He paused a fraction too long before doing it. Not enough for probable cause, not enough for escalation, but enough to twist the knife of suspicion a little deeper. I walked back to my cruiser and ran his information. Everything came back clean. No warrants, no alerts, no missing persons tied to his name, no hits on the plate, nothing that justified tearing his life apart right there, on the side of the highway. But the girl, the way she mouthed those words. Kids don't fake that kind of panic. You can't act fear that deep. I called for a second unit anyway. 1038, requesting another car. Passenger appears distressed. The dispatcher didn't question it. She heard something in my voice that told her this wasn't just me being cautious. I stepped out again and approached the driver's window more slowly this time. "Sir, step out of the vehicle for me." His polite smile faltered for half a second, just long enough to show me there was something beneath that surface charm. He unclipped his seatbelt and stepped out with his hands visible. "What's the issue?" he asked. Not angry, not confused, just curious, like he was watching an experiment. I kept him near the trunk, angled away from the car. "Your passenger looked upset. I'm going to speak with her." His eyes flickered, barely noticeable. "She's my daughter," he said, tone smooth. "Teenage mood swings. You know how it is." I didn't answer him. His smoothness was too polished, too practiced. I walked around to the back passenger door and opened it slowly. The girl recoiled at first, then leaned toward me like she'd been drowning for hours, and someone finally handed her air. Her voice cracked when she whispered, "Please don't let him take me back." I glanced toward the driver. His face remained unreadable, calm, still, like he knew he'd rehearsed for this. "Are you in danger?" I asked. She nodded so fast tears shook loose from her eyelashes. She leaned closer, voice barely audible. "He has my brother. He left him somewhere. Please, please, don't let him go." My blood ran cold. This wasn't just an abduction. This wasn't just a domestic situation. This was something much bigger, much darker. "Where's your brother?" I asked. She shook her head, frantically. "I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. He said if I said anything..." She froze, because the driver had tilted his head slightly, watching us in the side mirror, expressions still perfectly calm, perfectly under control, the look of a man who had planned for every possibility. I stepped between her and the driver's line of sight. "You're safe now. He isn't going anywhere." Her breathing hitched, and then she mouthed, "He will." Before I could ask what she meant, the driver spoke behind me. "Officer," he said, "are we almost done here?" His voice was so steady, so casual, so rehearsed that chills crawled up my spine. He wasn't afraid. He wasn't anxious. He wasn't even pretending to be innocent. He was waiting for the moment everything fell apart. I reached for my shoulder mic to call for immediate rush backup, but as my finger touched the button, the girl's eyes widened in horror, staring past me. "Officer, behind you." I spun. The driver wasn't where I left him. He wasn't near the trunk. He was reaching into the front seat. For what? I didn't know yet. But whatever it was, this stop had just become the worst one of my career. The moment I saw him leaning into the front seat, my hand went straight to my weapon. I drew, stepped back, and shouted, "Hands where I can see them." But he didn't freeze, didn't flinch, didn't react like people normally do when an officer points a gun at them. He just kept moving with that same eerie calm, his body half inside the car, arm digging under the seat like he was retrieving something he'd placed there hours ago, maybe days. I moved closer, keeping the angle ready to fire if he turned with anything in his hand. The girl behind me was whispering frantically, "He's going to run. He's going to run. He's going to run." The repetition wasn't fear. It was certainty. Like she'd seen him do this before with someone else. Like she knew exactly how this was about to play out. "Hands up!" I barked again. This time he froze. Slowly, way too slowly, he pulled his arm out from beneath the seat. Empty. He showed me his hands, palms open, expression perfectly blank. Then he smiled, a small, tight smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Sorry, officer," he said quietly. "Just grabbing my phone." That was a lie, a clean professional lie. And he didn't even try to make it believable. "Step away from the vehicle," I ordered. He did. One step at a time until he was back at the trunk. I kept him covered while I called in the situation. "Dispatch. I need units to expedite. Suspect possibly armed. Child reports another juvenile missing. Get K9 started." My voice stayed steady, but inside I felt the knife edge of panic grinding upward. My backup was minutes away. This man had a head start of hours, maybe days, and somewhere out there on this same highway, maybe in a ditch, maybe in a culvert, maybe in another stranger's car, was a younger child praying someone would find him. I holstered just long enough to cuff him. He didn't resist, didn't argue, didn't ask for a lawyer. He turned around, placed his hands behind his back, and let me restrain him with the same calmness you'd expect from someone buying groceries. But when I led him toward the rear door of my cruiser, he leaned slightly close and whispered, "You won't find the boy in time." That whisper hit me harder than any gun could have. I shoved him into the back seat and slammed the door. The girl burst out of the sedan the moment I gave her permission, clinging to my arm so hard her nails dug into my sleeve. "Please get my brother," she sobbed. "Please, please, he won't survive the night if you don't." My backup finally arrived. 3 cruisers, lights flashing, officers stepping out fast. They knew from my tone that this was bad. I briefed them quickly, ordered one to secure the girl, another to search the driver's car, and another to keep eyes on the suspect while I questioned him through the window. I leaned close to the glass and said, "Where is the boy?" He stared straight ahead, breathing steady. He wasn't panicked. He wasn't sweating. He wasn't afraid of consequences. He was enjoying every second of this. "You should hurry," he said softly. That's when the search officer called out, "Sarge, you need to see this." In the trunk, they found a folded map of the county. Several exit ramps circled in red, a few handwritten notes, and taped to the inside of the trunk lid, a Polaroid of a boy who looked maybe 9 years old, alone, crying, sitting in what looked like a drainage culvert. The girl saw the picture and screamed. I grabbed the map, scanned the circled locations, and immediately recognized one. Exit 244, an abandoned rest stop that had been shut down after multiple robberies years ago. Empty building, no cameras, several drainage tunnels underneath. Perfect place to hide someone. We mobilized instantly. The suspect never looked back, not once. He just stared out the front windshield of my cruiser wearing that tiny, cold smile. We sped toward exit 244 with lights slicing through the darkness. The girl was in the back of another cruiser, crying so hard she could barely breathe, repeating, "Please, hurry. Please, hurry," over and over until her voice cracked. I radioed ahead, sending units to block every entrance and exit, calling for aviation support and K-9 teams. When we reached the rest stop, it was pitch black. The building looked hollow, like a skeleton of concrete and broken asphalt. We swept the area, flashlights cutting through the abandoned picnic pavilions, the graffiti-covered walls, the overgrown brush. Nothing. No sound, no movement. Then K-9 alerted. Sharp, insistent barks near a storm-drain grate. We pried it open. My flashlight swept down the concrete chute, and then, with this small, weak, terrified voice, we heard it. "Hello?" It was the boy, alive. We climbed down into the tunnel. The stench of stagnant water hit me first. Then the darkness swallowed everything except the thin beam of my light. I followed the echo of his breathing, short, shallow, panicked, until the beam landed on him, huddled against the wall, knees pulled to his chest, tear-stained face. When he saw my uniform, he broke down completely. I carried him out myself, his arms clinging around my neck, his face buried into my collar. The moment he saw his sister, she screamed his name and ran toward him, hugging him so tightly I had to adjust my hold. She kept whispering, "I love you, I love you, I love you," over and over again, like she thought he might disappear if she said it too slowly. The boy sobbed into her shoulder. They were alive, both of them, both saved. But that wasn't the ending, not even close. When we returned to the traffic stop location to process the suspect and wait for detectives, I walked up to my cruiser to retrieve the paperwork. The suspect sat in the back seat with his hands cuffed, completely silent, staring at me through the window with that same small smile. Calm, gentle, almost fatherly. And then I saw something that froze me. The backseat door was unlocked. I knew for a fact I had locked it. I always lock it. It's muscle memory. But now it was open. Just enough to show someone had tested it. My blood turned to ice. I whipped around to check the other cruisers. Everyone accounted for. The suspect was still sitting where I left him. And then he said it, calm as ever. "That's one family you saved tonight, but not mine." I stared at him, confused. He leaned slightly forward until the chain of the cuffs tightened. "My daughter," he whispered. "My wife." His eyes didn't blink. I took theirs. Someone took mine. My chest tightened. And then he said the final words, the ones that ended the night on a note so cold, so dark, I still hear them echo when I try to sleep. "You think this is over? You're wrong. You only stopped me. You didn't stop the rest of us." My radio crackled behind me, officers shouting for me. When I turned back to the cruiser, he wasn't breathing. He had swallowed something he'd hidden in his cheek the entire time, and he was gone before we could even try to reverse it. No confession, no explanation, no names, no locations of others involved, nothing. Just one dead man, 2 traumatized siblings, and the knowledge that this wasn't the end. This was the intersection where we arrived too late to stop the beginning.